Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest live episode of VOX VOMITUS. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of the Kindle Award-winning novel Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, as well as Pretty Ugly and the Japanese Box and Other Stories. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, my twin for the day.
We're twins!
We're twins! It'll make sense later, I promise. Allison Martine, author of the BIRDBOX, which includes Dibs Since September, Move on Melinda, and Climb the Salmon Ladder. Joining us today from an undisclosed secretive medical laboratory, we have Hiron Ennes, author of the fantastic debut novel Leech, which came out last year. I recently just read it. Allison has read it now for the second time, if that tells you anything about how excited we are to have Hiron on the show. Hiron, welcome to VOX VOMITUS.
Thank you for having me and letting me vomit my Vox.
Yay!
Yes, thank you. Thank you for using that in the most correct manner possible for our fake Latin.
And as someone with a science background, we appreciate you validating our fake Latin.
Oh God, most of science is probably fake Latin anyway.
Yeah,
or like,
you know, as somebody who went to school for theater, I always believed that most of science was fake Latin or just like gobbledygook that was just written like the fake Latin that they use in exorcisms on Supernatural.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as a reformed lawyer, I mean, we learned if you didn't really know what to say, just throw some Latin in there because pro hoc vice. They don't know what that means, and then you're fine. Yeah.
Or even better, you take like one part Latin, one part Greek, and you smash them together, and if nobody notices, like you get extra points for that.
Oh no, that makes me hurt. Like you can't do that.
I like it.
How dare you? Jen's like, yes.
I love it because then I feel like it's just memorizing lines. I could do that.
That is, yeah, you could do that.
Yeah,
just do that. I could be a doctor of we'll
theater.
Get there
of theater, not of anything in this book because
I couldn't handle it.
I have to apologize to Jennifer repeatedly because I loved Hiron's book so much. I told her to read it after I read it the first time. Couldn't locate Hiron anywhere because, well, they're in an undisclosed location, as you can see. Like, we had to dig to find Hiron's working. But again, I was able to track it down. Special huge thanks to Sonia Dean, who was like, I read it and loved it. I'm like, me too, and I would love to have them on the show. And we don't know how to find them. And Sonia knew people who knew people who knew people who knew Hiron. So we were able to do that. And then I'm like, Jen, now you really have to do it. Listen to it. And I completely forgot all of her phobias about like eyeballs and things in eyeballs.
Eyeballs
so
that's your major of phobias. I know I have the minor crab phobia. I have the minor phobia of apples.
You have phobias of raw meat.
Raw meats
phobias of everything. So I don't feel like there's any safe book, even
but
a
eyeballs is
that wouldn't trigger you.
That's the big one. That's a big one. And we'll get there. Hiron, our audience is probably like, what the hell is this book about? It's called Leech. Hiron's in a top secret location. Tell us first a little bit about you and a little bit about Leech.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Hiron. Leech was sort of conceived between my undergrad and graduate school. So my background's actually in physics, and I was working next to a biophysics lab that was studying the emergent behavior of slime molds and how, and self-organizing self-organizing biological tissues and how they can make these really complex, almost crystalline structures, and how things like slime mold can take millions of different parts and almost consciously organize it into larger structures.
And that is terrifying.
So terrifying. Yeah. And I thought it was really cool. So I graduated. I didn't know where I wanted to go with my life, what I wanted to do. I was sort of leaning away from physics because I kept getting calls from the military being like, do you want to make lasers for anti-aircraft stuff?
No.
And it was like a choice between that or working in academia. And I'm like,
oh gosh, both are really terrifying in completely different ways than the slime mold.
Yeah. So, I mean,
and not as interesting.
So I'd always sort of had this love of biology. There were family members in the medical field that I had. So I already had sort of the privilege of an in and insight into that world. But after I graduated, I was sort of, existentially wandering. I was living in the basement of a Virginia Woolf professor at that time.
That's book 2. That's the way.
Yeah.
I would read
No,
that.
but
I would read whatever that is. Sentient slime mold living in the basement of a Virginia Woolf professor's house. Go.
There's your one-line pitch,
Yeah.
and go.
That's my personal pitch. I'm the slime mold.
I'm the
You
slime
are.
mold.
Yes.
It's been me all the time.
Yeah. So she had like literary connections that I never, it was sort of such a confluence of just like weird luck and privilege and knowing someone who knew someone else who forwarded me like a link to like an online writing course, and she's like, Hiron, you're depressed, you live in my basement, you're not applying to grad school, you're just a mess. So do something fun. You've always joked about how you didn't want to do real science and you wanted to write like schlocky sci-fi.
Yes.
So she sent me this like link to an online writing course, and at that time I was studying for the MCAT and just kind of miserable. So on a whim, I took it. It was really fun. It was the first writing course, like fiction writing course I'd ever taken. I learned what a workshop was.
Yeah. It's a really interesting first experience when you're like, oh, it's your workshop, and you're like, oh, people are just going to tell me everything they don't enjoy.
I loved it because it was so the people in the workshop were none of them were really sci-fi horror. They were all sort of like, literary fiction people, or like one of them was like a YA author, and they came at it from all these different angles, and they all had these really disparate critiques, which was a really good lesson in taking what advice you think is good for you.
Yes.
And then discarding all the rest. Yeah.
First off, your book completely fails as a rom-com. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it. The
Are you sure?
I don't know.
The meet cute is kind of weird.
There's some chemistry, but
yeah, there's
some
chemistry,
of
but that's not the kind of thing about.
Yeah, there's chemistry, but it's exothermic and explosive. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, long story, still kind of long. I took the course. At the end, they sort of introduced you to an agent because they gave you feedback on like how to write a letter to an agent and how to pitch your book.
So this is actually a useful writing course, because
that's actually a very
come out of
useful
stuff
writing
going,
course.
I don't know how to write a query.
Yeah.
A query. So
yeah, exactly.
What do you mean by log line? Like everything. And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to. Okay, I didn't know how to write a query letter.
Yeah.
I still don't.
Not well, but I get it.
Yeah, but received feedback on that. One of the agents who was supposed to critique the query letter was actually interested in seeing the full manuscript, and I had only written like 6,000 words of a novel, so I had to write the rest of the novel. Gave them the finished manuscript like a year later. They decided they didn't like it after all, but then like passed me on to someone else who also didn't like it, who passed me on to someone else who also didn't like it, and it sort of like went down a train
but I feel
for
like
a while.
It's still such a good compliment, the fact that they were passing you on to anyone instead of just the blanket.
No, they were all very helpful. It was a really really cool thing that happened, and so I got an agent and a publisher like in my second year of med school, and then got
as
a two-book deal. Yeah, as you do.
Like, I don't think anybody else is like, we've got rounds, or I don't even know what happens in the second year of med school, but they have other concerns, and you're like, no, I have a publishing deadline.
It's such a bad idea. I would not recommend writing in med school and or residency. It is exhausting. And
I'm expecting you to have bigger bags under your eyes there, because just residency alone should have killed you. But then you were also doing the publishing at the same time. I'm not sure how you.
I have to wonder what your schedule was like to be, doing, whatever medical school things happen.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. I mean, I saw a couple episodes of Grey's Anatomy like 20 years ago, but I don't think that's factual.
I watched Scrubs,
and then
that's not helpful.
And then like somehow balancing going home and like doing a possible rewrite or edits, or just thinking about the fact that this creature that you created is going to be literally unleashed into the world.
Yeah.
Did you have an identity crisis? Did you think, I'm going to drop out of med school? Because that's probably would have been my first.
Oh yeah. The first thing I did when I actually got a publisher was like phone my aunt, who is an artist and a harpist, and she's sort of she's done the art work-life balance for a long time, and I'm like, what do you recommend? And she's like, absolutely, unequivocally, never quit your day job.
Words of wisdom from the harpist, and
yeah,
that makes sense. But did she give you any kind of guidance about how to get through the next year or two? To do
no.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. So
No.
Did you finish, or should we be addressing you as doctor?
No, please
Oh,
don't. I am a doctor, but you don't need to call me Dr. Ennes.
Okay, but you
Yeah.
are a doctor.
You are a doctor.
Okay, so
I am a medical doctor, yes. Yes, but I'm a resident. I don't have independent practice privileges for another couple of years because I'm still technically in training. Yeah.
You do that.
So even though you're still technically in training, you are on a podcast right now possibly in a hospital.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhere in someone else's location.
Somewhere in an empty office somewhere.
No patient. This isn't like a HIPAA violation by you having like patient info up here. Like, this person's got the diabetes.
No. Let me be clear. There is no patient information on the screen, nor will I speak about any patient information.
There's a patient right next to you going, I have an owie. Could you please come help? And you're like,
our healthcare system sucks.
Okay, so Miffy says, my son's an M2 and his schedule is crazy. No way could he edit his screenplays this year.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think Hiron's recommending it. Hiron is not recommending doing any of this. This was a weird way to do it for quite a weird book, which when you say that you wanted to write schlocky sci-fi, I wanted
this is not schlocky sci-fi.
First off, how dare you? And second of all, no, it's not, because I feel like I have such a heart for, and people who watch this and know, I wanted to be a biologist, but I talk too damn much and I scare away the animals, and I cannot math. Between those two things, I am not allowed in the science field. But I actually did a rainforest expedition when I was in high school. I wanted to be a zoologist. I love sci-fi that actually does science, and you can see your science background on display here, and not in a showy way, but in a way that it just has this undercurrent of realism, and not like there's aliens and they all speak a language we can somehow understand. You're like, that's right, just how this is. So people who have like a very low tolerance for schlock sci-fi, this book is still yours. Now the eyeball stuff, we'll get to that.
That was a
lot.
Well, this is like one of the first things I've heard of that I've like recently, that it's been for me like horror sci-fi, or specifically gothic sci-fi, which, as you can tell by my background and my like, green
your
hair
aesthetic,
and everything,
yeah.
my whole vibe, my whole gig is love the whole gothic ideal.
I'm just goth adjacent.
Yeah, you're goth adjacent, which is still good. But yeah, when we saw sci-fi and gothic, I was like, this is the perfect book for Allison, who is sci-fi.
Or pretend.
Or pretend sci-fi, or pretend horror. So yeah, I was just so intrigued by it. And even though, I mean, you'll talk about the book a little bit more, but it's set in like the future.
That doesn't feel like the future. It took me
like
a long time to figure out we were in the future. Not too bright. I'm like, what?
I think I read someplace that it was in the future, and that's how I knew. Because I was like, ooh, I want to go back to this time. And I'm like, wait, no. This doesn't happen. Yeah.
So what
you just have to wait a long time.
Yeah,
a really
long time. And there are hints along the way. So when it comes together, it's not like this blindsided me, but it's not like the year is fill in a magical number like sometimes sci-fi does, or
right.
It's not a future that is a future I've seen before, which I really loved, because it didn't feel like the hokey, okay, everybody's on their little hoverboards or whatever, or we always assume progress and we probably shouldn't. So I love that this felt like a regressive future in many ways, and yet still a future that was recognizable as human in so many ways. So what was the inspiration for setting it in that kind of world that you created? And was it just living in Virginia Woolf's basement? That could explain a lot.
That probably is an explanation for some of it, but I think like just going back to the kind of background science, I really love thinking about how things can evolve over like long time scales.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of sci-fi that I've read that's sort of post-apocalyptic has to do with the immediate post-apocalyptic future. Like something bad happens and now everyone has devolved into animals and it sucks. And it's so boring. Like it's, the postman type stuff.
I was going to say there's usually Pedro Pascal escorting a magical child across.
Yes.
They haven't reestablished society yet. And in yours, it is so well established that it feels like, if you didn't know better, some of the early signs feel like they're in the past. Like 1800s Victorian is where I kind of felt we were until I'm like, wait a second.
With the musty wallpaper and the steps that squeak. And just like the kind of
That's your house,
of
Jennifer.
House.
That's your
My
house.
house is not rotting, but it does have
just check. The wallpaper, like that's a shower curtain behind you.
That's the shower curtain. Don't let anybody fool you.
Oh, is it? I thought
it totally is.
Wallpaper for a second. Yeah. Oh, it's just a really flexible wallpaper.
It's just really flexible because it's underneath covered in slimy mold that is
it
has become its own person.
It's become sentient.
Yeah. It loves the show.
It's like, thank you. But then you have these characters come in and it feels like it's future past France. I don't know. Do you have a French background somewhere that you pulled from, or a French class that you hated that you wanted to throw under the bus?
I'm Canadian originally, but I'm from Western Canada. So my whole life has just been a constant state of French-speaking imposter syndrome, where because I've lived most of my life in non-French speaking places, but I'm still Canadian. It's always just been like, oh, I have to go. I have to relearn French. I got to take this class
and do your
again. I've got to brush up.
Speak French? Because so my mom was Canadian, and so I grew up in the United States, not French. My dad didn't speak French, so I barely spoke French, but my mom did.
Yeah.
Like my entire life I've been like, why did I take German? Why did I
not helpful?
Take every language when like I should have just taken French.
To know what the hell my mom's been saying all these years. Mom,
your mom complaining under her breath about you.
I know. I'm like, I think in my own way, I really just didn't want to know what she was saying about me.
Yeah.
It was a defense mechanism. I can understand that.
Yeah. But this is how we got Emile and Didier.
Yes.
Yeah.
These names. I mean, it doesn't explain why some other people have tails. That's not a French feature that I know. I mean, maybe they're Fraggles or Monchichi. Did Monchichi have tails?
I don't know. I almost wore a tail today, but I realized that you wouldn't be able to see it, and I'd have to like lift it up and like waggle it. So that's why instead Allison and I dressed as
we're the twins.
And
our hair is tangled. I'm going the wrong way. Our hair is tangled together. I love. Okay, so
we screwed up.
What the heck? You've had time to go read the book, or in my case, I've listened to it twice. I loved your narrator. But there are two little girls in this who are. I mean, they're not the twins from The Shining, but I feel like they pay a little bit of cultural homage to it, where no one's really sure what they're doing, and they're putting weird tokens around the house and saying things that are just not quite right, and no one's really sure what to do with them. And the doctor comes in, and so I don't feel like it's a spoiler to say the doctor comes in knowing more than someone new to this manor where they are assigned to take over for a prior doctor should know, and it's eventually revealed why they know all this stuff. But I don't necessarily want to say why, but they come in knowing a lot, and it's like, yep, used to them. And these girls are just like, our hair is stuck together. We didn't know what happened. We weren't doing any. Okay, seriously, girls, how do you get your hair stuck together? My kids might do that, but they didn't. It has not happened yet.
In my head, I just felt like maybe this is me being like a natural curly-haired girl, that it's like, this will get tangled to anything that I get too close to.
It's like Velcro too, getting next to each other, or like the teenagers with their braces locking.
Yeah.
Like, I won't lie, my hair has been tangled in my husband's long hair. When we were both ballroom dancing, my hair would get tangled in his shirt. Like, mid dance, and we'd be like, "Uh-oh, like this is what's happening." So I
Yeah.
really related to those twins.
Yeah, I'm the only person. I guess I have sort of wavy hair, but I'm the only sort of straight-haired person in a family of really tightly curled heads. So
So that was also a genetic thing. You're like, these are my cousins. Look what happened.
yeah.
But none of them have tails. We're just clarifying. No one has tails, right?
No one in my family has tails that I know of.
That they
Right.
talk
But I
about.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar with Western Canada, so
Like, who knows what happens over
I
there?
have no idea.
I mean, it's legal to marry your cousin in Alberta, so
First cousin?
first cousin, yeah.
Why?
When I lived in the Midwest, I lived in Ohio for a while. I was married before the person I'm married to right now, and I had to, when we filled out our marriage license, we had to do like a public oath and swear we were not first cousins.
Oh,
And like they make
very
you
progressive.
swear an oath.
But what if you just like you're swearing and then you're like crossing fingers? I swear we're not kissing cousins.
It was just like, and it was only second cousin, so I thought, well, at least that's something.
Okay, so my sister's husband is Korean, and they have to do like a lot of background checks to make sure, because the common surnames are so common that his parents, my brother-in-law's parents, their last names were both Kim. They were not related to each other, but they have to like, do background checks to make sure how closely those Kims are related. And the answer is there are a billion Kims out there, and most of them are not that closely related to each other. But it's just like, imagine if America had half our country, our last names were all Smith. Trying to figure out if you're like related to those Smiths, as opposed to Brian Keene, who I hope I'm related to. He's a horror author that I probably could maybe be related to.
I'm going to believe that you two are related.
I want to be. He's probably like, why is this crazy woman claiming we're related just because we have the same last name and from Pennsylvania?
Yeah,
you never know.
But I'm also
I mean,
going to marry him. I just
genetic testing is cheaper nowadays, and you can always find out. But
personally, I want to find out I'm related to a Neanderthal. Is that a thing? Because I feel like I like that.
I know that in certain populations, ostensibly there is that Neanderthal DNA like floating around, but I don't actually know. Like,
probably mine.
Really?
It's been.
Well,
do you just get a vibe that you're?
No. Okay. So there is a higher correlation with that in the neurodivergent community, and 2 of my 3 children are neurodivergent. So I'm like, that's clearly in my DNA, and we now know more about stuff to know that Neanderthals were not like, dumb people. They were more advanced. They mostly just killed off by Homo sapiens because we're more aggressive and horrible. So there's that. So it's like I'm embracing that part and the pattern seeking and all that stuff. So I don't know how much of that's true and how much of that's speculation, but I think it's cool.
Yeah, I don't really know. And I actually don't know how much we can know given the limited information that we have. So, I mean, right for fiction, I guess.
Science questions. Like, so, can you explain to us?
I have this spot on my, like, we're doing a medical exam here, like it's telehealth. Like, is this going to be charged by my insurance if I ask for a diagnosis on this?
Oh, yeah. So I guess before the show, when we were talking about my fear of having something behind my eyeball, which may or may not happen in your book.
It happens.
Do you think dry eye would be a symptom of having
having pseudomycota? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Dry eye, maybe just a little bit of a rash that you can't quite figure out how you got or like where.
Oh my God! But that's my entire life.
Yeah. Maybe a vague sense of unease, I think, is also a symptom of it. Yeah.
I have it for sure.
Well, and to actually get to, so we were talking about this doctor shows up at this French-inspired retro future, I don't even know how to describe it, gothic chalet, where there's this man who should be dead. Like, seriously, why the Baron isn't dead. Kept alive by so many things that I love how minimal you said, because it just made my brain go to the worst places of like contraptions keeping him alive and like tubes and all. Like, I went to the worst places, and I feel like this should be directed by Tim Burton when they do the movie.
I was thinking Cronenberg.
But my only complaint is we cannot have Johnny Depp in this movie anywhere. This is a Johnny Depp free zone. Helena Bonham Carter is fine. She can go. But the weird stuff that this guy is kept alive and has this doctor come. So when the old doctor died under some interesting circumstances, which seemed unusual, this new young doctor comes in, and no one takes this doctor seriously, and we don't figure out for a while based on how they talk about him that this doctor is very, very young. Like, I don't know how young the doctor is, but I felt like they are probably maybe 18, maybe-ish.
I was hoping younger than Doogie Howser.
How old is Doogie Howser?
I don't know.
Well, now he's like 50.
Now he's a grown up.
Like, he
How old is
his
he on
husband
the
have
show?
2 kids.
I know. That's a reference for only like people who
I
grew
know.
up when
We're
we
old.
We are
I mean-
old people. I think he was 15,
I don't even know if he
Okay.
was that old.
16.
Yeah, not 15 or 16. Headcanon is like 20, early
Okay.
20s, which for many people is very, very young to be a doctor.
young.
Like patients used to ask me. I mean, they don't ask me anymore because I'm a pathologist. I don't really work directly with patients. But they're like,
Sample's not asking you anything.
aren't you a little young to be a doctor? And I got to the point where I started just like kind of lying to them and being like, they're like, how old are you? And I'd be like, 18.
just to screw with
Just
them.
in a
You should.
deadpan
Like,
flat
I went
face.
to Harvard when I was 12.
Yeah,
Prodigy.
yeah.
Like,
I'm only 14
Did you not
now.
read about me? I was on the cover of People magazine.
Yeah.
That's when you
Yeah.
say, I just prematurely aged from all the studying I did, and I'm
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
only 8.5.
I'm
Or just say you have
12.
Benjamin Button's disease and you're
Yeah, yeah.
They're like, that's not real, like, isn't it? But yeah, like, so the doctor comes and they're young and they're not getting treated very seriously, but obviously they come along knowing a lot because they come in with some knowledge, find out that the doctor beforehand has gone off in some very weird circumstances that were unexpected, and it leads them to pseudomycota. And okay, did you make up that name? Is it actually Greek? Is it Vox Vomitus level of fake Greek?
It's Vox Vomitus level of fake.
Good.
Absolutely.
So like you
But it
get
works for
what
me.
you're trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
but-
It's like it's sort of maybe fungal, but it's not a fungus. It's like a fake fungus. So we'll call it pseudomycota.
A
It's kind of
fungus, like FAU.
Yeah, a fungus. Yes. That would have worked. That would have worked even better because it's French. Oh my god, why didn't I?
And
know
you're
that?
like, write that down.
Fungus.
Fungus.
And the way the doctor responds to this is not just like, oh no, this thing might have killed people, but it's such a like visceral and also like personal reaction, like, how dare you? And it becomes clear why that is. And because I feel like most doctors are like, oh no, the human loss, new pathogen. It's like, oh no, you.
You.
How dare you think you're better than me?
Yeah, that's really what it comes back to. And all the stuff going on there, and like the boil that the wife can't reach, and just I don't know if you had any hand in picking who was going to be your narrator. Did you get a like list of people you could pick from? Because oh my god, they were amazing.
Okay, yeah. I got a very short list of prospective narrators, and I ended up choosing Abby Thorne because her cadence is so good.
Yes.
And when I first listened, Ellen, when I first listened to the audiobook and heard Abby's Ellen, I was just like, this is the horniest bitch I have ever heard. It's so good.
Touch me, doctor.
Yeah, it's so good.
I know. I was just like,
I love
oh,
the way
there
she
is.
plays her.
Yeah. I was hoping for a little rom-com there.
No.
but that didn't.
That is again
Yeah.
the wrong advice from. But okay, so you have
You
this.
say wrong. I say something to explore.
Yeah,
Who
you're like,
knows?
let's just
see what
here.
happens.
Yeah. I also think Jennifer, she may have had issues with all the stuff going on with the eyes, but you were much more merciful to the dogs, which you would have had her just leave.
Yeah,
You like the dogs. There are some lovable, loving dogs in this that some people want to do bad things to them because they may have been infected by the pseudomycota, and you don't want that.
Let the dogs take over the world, man.
I'm okay with that. Planet of the Canines.
Fine.
I'm kind of a dog sparer in general. I
Thank you.
think that I guess Leech is kind of guilty because like dogs are kind of cheap, right? Like everyone loves dogs. Hurting a dog is cheap, and Leech is really cheap in that like it kind of endangers the dogs, but it doesn't go through with it. So
I feel like
spoilers.
even the leech would, it's like, I can't. I mean,
I
look,
can't.
it's
so
so
cute.
cute.
It's so
It would
cute.
love me
Little ear.
forever.
I
One
know.
ear. Yeah, it would. No, and I feel like, so you take some topics and some themes that are dark and gross, and yet there's such humanity through all of this, and just the themes that you explore through some of these kind of unconventional ways, and the idea of what life means and at what expense we hold life, everything from how the rich treat the poor and expendable minors or different groups of people who, oh well, you know, the montish who have the tails, and I would like to be one of those, and how other groups see them. You explore this also beautifully, and then you come back to these disgusting themes too. And I've never read something that I felt did something like this so well. And I would say like your narrator handled some of the voices in the heads so well that it was always clear what was going on, when other voices were being heard that maybe shouldn't have been being heard. Like this is a sign something is going very, very wrong. What was the inspiration for some of that internal dialogue stuff?
It it all kind of came back to the emergent behavior thing in biology, and like, okay, if an organism can be made out of so many cells that communicate in very unique and interesting ways and express their genetics in different ways while, you know, being part of the same organism, like how do my thyroid cells know to be a thyroid cell, and how does my skin know how to be a skin, and how do they communicate with each other so that my blood pressure goes up or down. I kind of just like wanted to take the idea of like cell to cell communication, even by long distances, and just size it up and be like, okay, the unit of communication is a human brain at this point. And then, because like hive minds in science fiction are, you know, that sort of time honored tradition,
And a good one.
and a good one. And I really love hive minds, and so
Yes.
I sort of approached it with the intent of exploring if your sort of smallest unit of communication is actually a full human, and full humans have extremely unique brains and unique ways of thinking about things, because necessarily even genetically identical individuals will grow up in slightly different environments. Like, how would these units of communication actually end up processing things differently from each other? And even us with like one brain inside of us, we have chatter, like we have voices, we have second thoughts, we have
Mine
like
never
all of
stop.
us. Yeah, exactly. We doubt ourselves, we say things that we're like, why did I say that? And like just internally in a single conscious mind, we have all these contradictions and all these internal conversations. And I think that if I were a hive mind who was made up of people, I would try to sort of externalize a little bit of that, and talk to myself out loud. I talk to myself out loud as it is.
You're like, just me.
Yeah, and like what units of this larger being would react to stimuli in different ways just by virtue of having different genetics, and would they disagree with each other, and why and how, and that was really, really fun, and I had a great time with it.
Well, I loved reading it and figuring out where things were going, including how we're solving a problem like pseudomycota, which, like, okay, hi, it could probably kill everybody here, and how is it spreading? And oh, damn, the dog might have it, and oh, maybe it's in other people earlier that we didn't realize,
Right.
and it's in
That
the
part was terrifying. The idea of that when we didn't really understand how long it had been inside anyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's in us now.
And it's like, yeah, and it could be anybody. It's that, yeah. So
it's a body
like,
snatcher kind of thing where the incubation time is
it's
as
like
long as you want.
Mm-hmm. And it depends on, how which person has it and what their immune system is like. And I mean, even in real life, you can incubate something for a day or 6 months. depending.
And it's like when my kid goes, Jackson spit on me and that's why I'm sick. I'm like, well, it's possibly why you're sick, but you guys are all a bunch of germs. So let's not blame Jackson, but maybe he should stop spitting on you. And you're all a bunch of second grade germs. Like if you want a petri dish, go into his second grade class.
Yeah. The moment your kid is like, somebody spit on me, you're like, oh, I'm going to be so sick in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Well, my
with like 10 different things.
Oh. Yeah. Like you should be wearing a mask around our kids all the time. Like, that's impractical, but I'm not going to wear a mask 24/7 because also by the time I realize one of them's sick, it's too late. I've already smuggled them. I've got it. But all basically from November to about April, it's just gross around here. But I do have an aching question. What the hell is wheat rock? And I don't want to eat it.
Oh yeah.
Don't make me eat it, but what is it? I really want to know.
Wheat rock is, I mean, a lot of things in the book are sort of left unexplored.
Which I love. Thank you for doing
that's
that.
Why I'm like, it was changing in my head, even from reading it the first time, the second time, I'm like, what the hell is it? And I'm going, it's like doozer sticks that are made from radishes and the Fraggles eat them. But I can't make everything into Muppet logic. That is how I function. But I'm pretty sure they weren't originally radishes growing in caves. So then I'm like, it's a fungus. It's some kind of nasty fungus because it's growing in caves. So I'm assuming
I thought it was like the world's worst potato.
So now it's a tuber. All right, the world's worst potato.
Yeah. But like really
world's
hard.
worst potato.
I love that. I love the world's worst potato. And that sort of makes sense because like exactly what sort of organism or crystalline structure wheat rock is doesn't really matter in this story. I think its function is more like, it might have been something used in the past to either provide fuel for jets or fertilize fields. It's some sort of like high energy stored substance. Yeah, it's soy.
It's lembas bread.
It could be anything.
Lembas bread. It's something that's delicious and can.
Is it though?
I don't know. I've never tried it.
It was. And I think that was one of the things is because once I realized this is the retro future, that there are certain things that have survived. Like we still have trains. So that's part of the reason why I thought we were where we were in time-wise, because we start with someone on a train with gloves. I'm like, okay, this feels like this era. And then you take us a little beyond that and a little out of it. And then I'm like, so what was wheat rock and how did we get there? And you never do answer it.
No, I maybe one day I'll wake up in the middle of the night with like a short story idea and I'm like, oh, that's what wheat rock is. But like
it's the title, World's Worst Potato.
World's Worst Potato, but it's just something that Pseudomycota loves to feed on and that people also sometimes love to feed on and crops love to feed on and maybe machines like to feed on it too. I don't know. I don't really know who invented it.
I'm just the person who created You invented it.
You did.
Me.
Hiron, it was you.
Me in this lab.
Yeah. Stirring it in the background again.
Yeah.
Okay, so
our last batch couldn't fuel a car, but this one will.
This one might, yeah.
Well, I mean, we use French fry oil sometimes to fuel cars, so it's not like weirder things haven't happened. And
complex hydrocarbons can do anything.
Allison and I both shut down when you said that for a second. We're like, hydrocarbon.
If you can burn it, you can do anything with it.
I have a carbon-based life form, except for that one X-Files episode where they were like not carbon-based. I don't think anybody else remembers that, but me, I'm old.
Were they silicone-based?
I think they were silicone-based because I think that's always the thing when it isn't carbon-based. Like it's silicone-based, but I'm like, is there another choice of what it could be?
I don't know. That's not my specialty.
You're like, that's
it's
not
on wheat rock. It could be made out of wheat rock.
So you managed to get through this book and you managed to get through medical school and have like a real person day job that your harpist aunt said, do not quit.
Yes.
But are you still writing?
She must be so proud right now.
So we can have more wheat rock induced stories that may not need to include wheat rock. We're not limiting you. We're just curious.
I am still writing. I have a story coming out in an anthology this October of Canadian writers called Northern Nights, published by Undertow and edited by Michael Kelly. There isn't wheat rock in there, but it is a short story that's sort of a proto Montish story. Like it's way closer to our time. It's like before some of the larger apocalypses that have buried Verdera in snow, and that's coming out. I'm still working on book 2.
Does
Got
that have a
feedback.
date set?
2025
Okay, that's
somewhere?
no.
That sounds so far in the future, but it's 2024. It's very weird.
Oh my
like,
God, no, yeah, it is.
weird. I know. It's like wait a
close.
second,
I know that's just next
it's
year.
next year. That's not.
Yeah.
And in publishing time, that's like a week from now.
Yeah.
I know. I need to work on it.
Like that's what
Stop
I
messing
do.
around, Hiron.
I know.
Working, doing podcasts, having green hair.
Are you still living in a basement under Virginia Woolf Professor House? Or
No, I have my own 1-bedroom like a real adult.
okay, mostly I'm just worried
Like a
about like, your
doctor
air
should.
circulation and that you're not living in an actual cave. Like that just makes me a little concerned for your lungs, you know.
It's a little cave-like, but
Nothing wrong with that.
I think I'm okay. We'll find out.
Yeah.
It's all good. I mean, I loved this, and it is always funny whenever I find out somebody is like their day job is so different than whatever writing is. There's like, oh yeah, I'm a literature professor and I write. It's like, okay, those things make sense. You're like, no, I'm in the hard sciences and I have a hard science job, and then I go back to writing. That you can understand somebody being like, yeah, I don't want to mess around with publishing anymore because they're mean over there.
It's so okay. So one thing, like, I recently joined I don't know anyone who's an author. I don't have any author like friends. I joined a Discord.
You do now.
Yeah, well, I do now, but like I joined a Discord and like I went into it with the thought that like, wow, I'm so lucky that I can do this for a living. And then like a week into the Discord and hearing like chatter about like publishing industry and being a writer and being a full-time writer and like being dependent on that like as an income, I was just like, I am so lucky to not have to do this for a living.
That's what Hiron just does this away from the Discord. Like Homer Simpson back into the bush.
Well, I feel like when we all start in this industry, like you just like go in there like these rose-colored glasses, and then you start just hearing things. And you're like, oh, that too happened. And then
it is such a weird world out there, y'all. It's so weird, and it's like I don't really know, like the Virginia Woolf professor, academic writing. I have like no idea. I had no idea what the fiction publishing world was like, especially genre fiction.
And it is totally different. And I was gonna say, like, you coming from a science background, how you would have been told to write would have been completely different than how fiction is supposed to be. And I come from a legal background, and I went from like writing short stories and stuff as a kid, having that beaten out of me a little bit in college, completely beaten out of me in law school, where they're like, stop using adjectives. How dare you? Get over it. I mean, I remember having my boss sit there with a red pen, like crossing off anything that was even remotely interesting in my brief. It's like factual. I'm like, you're no fun. Like maybe the mediator wanted to have fun while reading this, okay? But no, probably the mediator did not want to have fun while reading that.
I mean, I would say that science writing is the same, but it really depends on the outlet. Like there are some like medical paper, like published in medical journals that'll be like jalapeno-induced diarrhea, an explosive spice of or like it's just like something like they'll put it. Yeah.
You're like, I saw that one, pulls it up. And I
like love
that.
those papers.
Clickbait.
Well, and I've been helping a friend who he's getting his doctoral thesis, but it's in folk music. So again, it's academic writing. I've loved reading it because I haven't read that kind of writing in a long time, like the actual academic writing. And even still, what law school does is very different than what the academic dissertation style writing. And I outright tell them, like, if your footnotes are wrong, I'm not gonna be able to help you that, but I can tell you where your commas are wrong, and the answer is most places. So let's start with that. And really, what he wanted me to be doing was having no knowledge of the area doesn't make sense. Is he making too many assumptions? And can I read? And I really enjoyed doing that. I don't think I could get through a science paper at this point because my years of biology are so far behind me, and it has been replaced by schlock science fiction to the point where I'm like, what do you mean the Epstein drive isn't real? You're telling me that James S.A. Corey, who is 2 people, made that up? I mean, there's a hive mind for you. And I don't remember anymore. Like, wait, did I learn that? So Stargate, that's not real either. Okay. Where is real science? I don't even know. So
that's honestly, an awesome world to live in, honestly.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
again,
it
you
sounds
can't,
magical.
it's magical, but you can't necessarily trust what science is. And I joke that I'm like literary science fiction, but it's really more science fantasy because my science is not good enough to count as like hard science fiction
No,
because
and like
cannot science.
there's nothing wrong with science fantasy either. Like I love a little science that resembles magic, and I love not having things explained to me, and I like not explaining things to other people, obviously.
Like we rock.
Like
Yeah.
we rock.
And I appreciate that because I always love books that make me think, what the hell is going on here? And also, I like, maybe that's the artist mind in me, I like it in my imagination.
Yeah,
Mhm.
If
yeah.
you
There's
told me that wheat rock was more like a thin crystalline sheet of like something, I'd be like, oh, I don't like
yeah.
that I know
It
that.
takes away a little bit of the mysticism that
Yeah.
sort of, and that drew me to science fiction when I was a kid, and like sort of still keeps me there. Like there's, like when I was a kid, there was something like so incredibly mystical about like Dune that just blew me away. And like I went to Christian school when I was a little kid, and
We're sorry.
Yeah, turned me into a
Apologies.
raging atheist for a while. But no, but
That's what
I feel like
happens.
I really, it was like my alternative to the Bible was essentially Dune, and it was like as important spiritually to me to have
It's
something
also
like
as heavy. Like
mysterious.
it's
It's
more
also
about
as heavy and big.
yeah.
Yeah, and especially as a kid, it just like seems so mysterious and adult, and
Mhm.
you're like, and like there is a lot of mysticism in Dune. Like, don't get me wrong, not all big sci-fi books are like that, but I think
That
there's
one's
just
particularly mystical. It's like,
that one's particularly
what is
mystical.
in that box? Don't ask.
Don't ask.
Let me put my hand in there again.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Just don't
No,
do it.
and I love that, and I'm probably one of those weird people because I am a Christian who still loves the sci-fi, and I'm like, this is why I loved the Frank Peretti and the C.S. Lewis stuff, and have always thought they can go together.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing saying they can't. But I do like the idea that you're like, this is my alternative growing up. Like I'm gonna go over here and read what's going on this planet rather
Yeah.
than whatever's going on in the Book of Job because
On ours. Yeah. Yeah, and they were presented, I mean, they struck my developing mind as having equal weight, which I think is, I don't know, kind of interesting looking back on
That's
it.
amazing.
Well, I
Yeah.
think the creative aspect absolutely should be because I mean, you need that part. And to be creative, you can't be like everything's prescriptive. It has to be open to be letting you figure things out. Like, what is wheat rock? And don't tell us, that's fine. But the idea, like for now, what are you reading now that isn't your medical textbooks of looking up what's in the little petri dish next to you? Like, oh, that's gross. Matches this picture. Yep, we have a match. So what are you reading now, or do you even have time to read now?
I am reading now, let's see, I just finished Pale Fire by Nabokov, which was incredibly good. Just, if you like unreliable narrators,
Yeah.
highly recommend Pale Fire. It's, have you heard of it? Will I be repeating myself if I sort of
No,
explain
go
it?
for
Or
it. 'Cause
No,
I
go
know
for it.
Nabokov, but I don't know that one. I think everybody
I know
knows
neither
that's
do I.
Lolita, right?
Yeah,
Everyone
Lolita.
knows
The only one we
Lolita.
got, we were like,
Lolita's
ooh,
first
Lolita.
one.
You only got the- yeah.
So Pale Fire is presented in two parts. The first part is an epic poem by a fictionally famous poet, John Shade. And then the latter half of the book is commentary on the poem itself.
Ooh,
And
I love that.
the narrator is the commentator on the poem, and he is insane. And it is so good. And it's just like narrated by a delusional little freak, and it's awesome. Highly
Love it.
recommended, especially if you have like any background in academia and any interest in poetry, I guess, even though it's a novel essentially. But
No,
it's really,
No, that
really
sounds,
good.
yeah, no, that's awesome.
I love that, and I do love unreliable narrators. And I don't know if have you read Adam Levine's or Adam Levin's Bubblegum? Have you read that one? It's one of the books that I shove at people who I go, I think you can handle this, and so I don't shove it at many people because first off, it is Dune sized, and
Yes.
I listened to a lot of it. And my library app that had it, like I renewed it twice and then it was no longer available. So I had to go chase down a physical copy because I needed to know how it finished. But I had a friend stop reading it right away because the grammar was incorrect, but it's because everybody talks like the narrator. Everybody is. And they have a very specific way of talking. And there's some unreliability about how things happen, like interchanges, because you can tell everything is funneled through this very strange narrator's POV.
Awesome.
But there's also some like gross stuff that happens and squeamish. But you wrote Leech, so I think you're
the grosser, the squeamisher, the more unreliable. Yeah.
But there are some. It's about these little things that may or may not be animals or maybe robotic, and it is intentionally left unclear which they are. Yes. They're so cute that people kill and eat them. But they're
awesome.
Also go figure. Yeah. Jennifer's just like, why are you trying to make me read this book? I'm like, I want to.
No, I mean, I would read that.
You're like, probably.
Yeah, that was a pretty successful pitch, I think.
Yeah. And I
think what kept me away is you were like, it's like 45 hours long.
It is
and I'm like,
too long. And like, as you can tell,
time.
we've tried to scale back how many shows we do because we do read every book that we have on the show.
Right.
And then at some point we're like, we never have time to write our own stuff. And we're like, oh, we were supposed to be doing that. We know we forgot something. Right.
I know. Like, oh, my career. That's what I forgot.
So our own stuff.
How am I supposed to quit my day job?
Yeah, exactly.
You're a dance teacher.
I know.
What if you just listen to the books while you're dancing?
Because I'm supposed to be communicating with my students.
Oh, I knew I forgot something.
And I've got to hear the music. They're not going to count the foxtrot for themselves. That's what I'm there for.
I'm glad you're there for them. You need them. I love that. But yeah, go get Bubblegum. It's what I think you would enjoy. But I'm waiting for your next book, and I will be looking for it. Tell us the name of the anthology again. We can put it in the comments too. It's coming out in October.
It's called Northern Nights.
And it's coming out in October
of this year.
2024. Yep. And it's a Canadian. Is it Canadian horror?
Yeah, it's Canadian. It's all cold night themed. It can be sort of like cross genre, but
yeah, I've learned a lot of times the genre of something is up to the interpretation of whether or not the editor wants to kind of impose whatever the genre is.
Yeah, or like whatever they want to market it as.
Yeah, they're like, we told you
like,
this in the call.
Horror's hot right now. Let's do that. Oh no, let's call it.
Let's call it speculative. That seems less scary.
Speculative is the good blanket term.
Yeah.
What? It's all good. It's all good. Hiron, you were amazing. I know you probably have to go back to your job because we've kept you for almost an hour, and considering you came on before the show, it's been an hour. But we want you to come back from your undisclosed location with samples of wheat. I'm just kidding. You don't have to actually produce samples of wheat.
Sure, I'll bring a little jar of it.
It could be anything. Just let a potato start to rot now, and by the time the next book comes out, it will have like a face.
Rock. They're like, it's boba pearls or it's like apple butter. There are some really nasty things we can. If you don't know
make some wheat rock out of that. Yeah, that's disgusting.
You're like, it's crystal candy. It's wheat rock. Yeah, but it's nutritious. Imagine if like hard rock candy was actually nutritious.
Oh, I wouldn't eat anything else.
Yeah. Dentists would be really mad. They're like, we've been telling you not to eat it. You're like, but it's nutritious. Crack. There goes.
Like, I don't need vegetables anymore. I never did.
Dark chocolate's healthy now.
It is. Hiron, thank you so much. And thank you everybody who's watching us live or on the replay. Make sure to tune in 2 weeks when we are back. Until then, bye Leech. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Thank you.